This is the Everyday AI Show, the everyday podcast where we simplify AI and bring its power to your fingertips. Listen daily for practical advice to boost your career, business, and everyday life.
AI has changed the creative advertising game. And that's not hyperbole. That is actually happening live before our very eyes. Speaking of live, hey, thanks for tuning in. This is live. This is Everyday AI, your daily live stream, podcast, and free daily newsletter helping everyday people like you and me learn and leverage generative AI to grow our companies and to grow our careers. So if you are tuning in and maybe you want to know a little bit more about Midjourney, about AI art, about AI powered videos, about how to maybe grow your business with generative AI, especially on the creative side, you're in literally the best place in the world right now, because we're going to be bringing on here in a couple of minutes who I think is one of the best out there in the game, bar none. And he's going to be walking us all through how to use Midjourney for more powerful and more effective ad creative. Whew, this is going to be a good one, y'all. But before we get into that, make sure, if you haven't already, to go to youreverydayai.com, sign up for our free daily newsletter. This is going to be one you're going to need to read to believe. We're going to be sharing a lot of examples. This is a very visual show. So, hey, I'll throw out the warning right now. If you are listening on the podcast, first of all, thanks for your support. As always, thanks for making Everyday AI a top 10 tech podcast. We appreciate that. But you might want to check the show notes, and we always leave a link back so you can watch the live show. You got to see these visuals. I know words, but I don't have the words to describe the level of creativity that we're going to be showing for you today live on the screen. So before we get into this, make sure, as I always talk about, sign up for the daily newsletter. We're going to be recapping the news, this show, and more. But let's quickly go over what's going on in the world of AI news. All right, so will ChatGPT be used to keep us safe from biological threats? Maybe. OpenAI just released a study on the potential risks of AI-enabled biological threat creation. So the study found that at the current generation of large language models, it does not pose a significant risk, but OpenAI did caution that future models could become more dangerous. OpenAI's study found that GPT-4 only provides a slight improvement in accuracy for biological threat creation and often produces misleading results. Interesting. Hey, speaking of threats, government officials are demanding AI companies disclose safety results of their models. So the Biden administration has introduced new regulations for AI developers, requiring them to disclose their safety testing to the Department of Commerce in order to ensure transparency and safety in the development and deployment of AI technologies. So companies must provide, including their safety tests, to the Department of Congress. So the U.S. government is prioritizing AI as both an economic and national security issue and is exploring international regulation and hiring more experts in federal agencies. Tongue-tied this morning, y'all. All right. And then last but not least, a new open source model has leaked, and it's pretty impressive. So there's a recent discovery of a seemingly new open source large language model on Hugging Face, referred to as MyQ170B. All right. And its potential really was to rival or even exceed the current top performing model, which we've all heard of, this little model called OpenAI's GPT-4. So the CEO of Mistral confirmed the leak on Twitter /X/ whatever we're calling it, saying it was actually based off of an older model of Mistral. So if you follow the large language model game and, everyone's kind of been chasing OpenAI's GPT-4 for a long time, this is some news you're probably going to want to check out a little bit more of in the newsletter. Pretty intriguing. All right. But you probably didn't tune in, if I'm being honest. You probably didn't tune in to hear the AI news. Maybe you did. However, you are probably here to get a masterclass in Midjourney. We've talked about Midjourney a handful of times on the Everyday AI show, and we've had some guests before in the past. And I had to actually bring one of our former guests back for an encore performance because Midjourney has changed so much in the past couple of months, a big jump from version 5.2 to now version 6. There's so much to uncover. I didn't want to bore you with me rambling on. So we're going to bring on an actual expert to help guide us through. So let's do that right about now. So please help me welcome to the show. There we go. We got him there. Rory Flynn, who is the founder of Systematiq Ai. Rory, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, man. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to do this again.
Oh, so good. So just like, let's get the basics out of the way. Like, what is Systematiq Ai and like, what do you do as a Midjourney master?
Totally. Yeah, man. So Systematiq AI essentially is I call it an operational AI company. Now, again, there's a lot of tools out there, but how do you use them? How do you actually put them into your business and make them work for you? So typically we're just looking for, businesses that have holes in their operations and their creative processes. And we're installing tools and processes to get them from point A to point B quicker, easier, with more explosive creative. So simple as that. We're doing training, we're doing consulting, we're doing, a number of different things there. But it's been pretty interesting with these tools and how they develop and the pace at which they develop. So, there's been a lot of opportunity to inject this stuff.
Yeah. And just, for those people listening that aren't super familiar, right? Because I think when we talk about generative AI, I think the de facto thing that everyone thinks about is something like an OpenAI, right? The ChatGPT, or maybe they think of, Google Bard. I don't think everyone necessarily even thinks about AI art, right? Unless you're maybe in a creative field, obviously. Give us like the zoomed out version of like, what the heck is even AI art? What is Midjourney? And why should we all be paying attention to it, even if we're not maybe a creative?
Yeah, man. So I think when you look at it, right, like Midjourney essentially at its most basic form, you put in some text, you get an image, right? Pretty simple. But again, typically, when as marketers and people that have worked in a creative field, or just basically in any industry now, right? If you didn't have photography elements, you didn't have different brand assets, things like that, you just had to go to stock photography sites, and they all kind of suck. I'm going to be honest. They were like, you spend more time on there looking for something that fits your brand than actually like producing the work. So if you think about all the creative needs that you have in a business on a day-to-day, maybe you have some, maybe you don't, but there's social media, there's blogs, there's ads, there's presentations, there's storyboarding, there's this, there's that, right? So all of them require some visual piece. And how do we just get from A to B quicker? Because I think a lot of people are looking for just finished product from everything that comes out of AI, right? Like, I want to push a button, I want everything to be done. Now, granted, probably we'll get there, but at this point, we can also look at different pieces in our business operations as to where we get from point A to point B quicker by using the tools instead of wasting time on ancillary tasks. So that's kind of how I look at it overall.
And who should be using AI art, right? Is it only people who are in the creative fields, photographers? Should non-creatives be using tools like Midjourney? Like, maybe what are some of the use cases when we talk about just the wide range of people that maybe could, or maybe if you could share some examples of, people that maybe we wouldn't think, oh, they could use Midjourney for this use case. Maybe let's talk through those kind of across different fields or different professions.
Totally. I mean, like, I think personally, designers are the most apt to use the tools. Like, you already know the technology, you already know how to make things visually stunning. You also know the terminology, right? So thinking about prompting the same way as ChatGPT, right? You need to have the right tokens to get the right answers. Same thing with Midjourney. If you know what a high contrast photo is, or different opacity levels or things of that nature, right? Like, you've already been working in it, you can describe it, and that's what's going to get you the good output. But I think, in everyday life, right? You think about, okay, I'm going to post on LinkedIn today. Do I just put a text post up, or do I put a crazy visual along with the text to stop the scroll? Like, something very simple like that. It doesn't have to be this whole like crazy production. It can be something very simple. I need an image for my newsletter that I'm sending out, right? Maybe just to tie it in, I'm talking about, Burger King's new XYZ or whatever the hell they're doing, right? Maybe I just need an image of like a cool image of a hamburger in like a 1950s environment, just to like make the newsletter pop a little bit more. So it doesn't have to be, like I said, you don't have to create ad campaigns. You don't have to create, Hollywood movies. You can just do little things with it. It's just finding those little holes. Same way you probably look at ChatGPT, right? I have a question. Can ChatGPT answer it? I have a task. Can ChatGPT do it? I just think about it in the same way as a creative sense. I need an image. Can Midjourney do it? Most likely, yes. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Even I want to talk through my personal experience and get your take on this, Rory. So, we've been using, Dolly, I don't know, 2, I think originally was very early on, and we were using Midjourney, I think in the fours or before, right? But very early on, I'd say Midjourney or AI art in general was very AI art, right?
Yeah.
Like you couldn't really honestly use it for anything because the outputs, at the time it looked very, computer generated or, obviously very, disformed, disfigured if you were trying to generate images of people or animals. But it's not really like that anymore, especially when we talk about the big jumps from version 5 to now we're in Midjourney V6. Can you talk just a little bit just about the industry at large and how now from a quality standpoint, like where are we at?
We're pretty close with Midjourney. I mean, to being indistinguishable. I mean, I've produced things that people would never know were AI, and that's because there's a detail and a craft to it. I think a lot of the stigma around like AI art is it's kind of generic, but if you have a creative vision, you can execute it. It comes down to how you prompt. So I think, again, there's certain tools like DALL-E is really good for people that just need some basic stuff. It listens really well. It produces really quality images. Midjourney is like taking that creative juice to the next level, right? And there's other tools beyond Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, things of that nature that can go even further than that. So it really just depends on what you need, right? And I think, the jump from Midjourney, even like you said, 3, which was kind of like, it was cool, it was novel, it was like nightmare fuel, some of the stuff you'd get. But, to now in less than, let's call it like 18 months is insane because I can produce things that are polished and quality ready. And then even if I needed another additional tool to make it look even more real, tools like Magnific, I won't go too far into there, but it's a really good tool for maybe something that has like an AI polished looking face. Because sometimes you'll prompt that and it looks like a robot, right? Like you get a face, it looks like a robot, like super smooth skin, everything is perfect. A tool like Magnific upscales it and then adds details. So skin wrinkles, little hairs, freckles, bags under the eyes. You're like, okay, now it looks like a human, not a robot. So yeah, we're moving pretty quick, man. And I don't, this is just in the level of quality from each jump in version plus how quick it happens. This development cycle is not like, your new iPhone every year. And it's like, oh, the camera upgraded. It's like every 2 weeks we get something that's like that level of, that level of development. So I don't know how to extrapolate where it goes from here and how quickly it moves, but it's going to move fast.
Oh gosh, yeah, so fast that I would agree with Jay joining us here when he says fasten your seatbelts. And I will tell our live audience right now, please get your questions in because we're about to show some examples on screen and you're probably like, your mind's going to be like, wait, what? Like the whole point of Everyday AI is for us all to learn together from some of the smartest people out there. So real quick, we're going to take one question here and then we're going to get into some examples because I can't wait for our live audience to see this. But great question here from Richard saying, other than replacing stock imagery with AI images from tools like Midjourney, anyone making money or use of it? So yeah, because I think sometimes, Rory, I think people like me and you, we maybe live in an AI bubble, right? And we just assume like, oh, everyone's using, Midjourney and DALL-E, but I think the vast majority of people probably don't. So maybe just talk a little bit here to Richard's question about like, hey, are people really using this out in the wild and are people making, money and a career off of creating AI images?
Yeah, I mean, if you're purely just trying to make money off AI images and not like utilize it within your actual business process, I mean, there's a million use cases. I can go spin up a print-on-demand shop and sell T-shirts today in 20 minutes, right? I have enough imagery there to go create a T-shirt shop like that. Do that for any sort of product that on Printify, right? Like I'm not going that route because it's just like, again, that just bloats the market, and I don't think it's really like where the actual use cases are. I think really looking inside of businesses and seeing how to get from point A to point B quicker, right? So I think about how many presentations do people have to do, right? Like a presentation, instead of doing a boring PowerPoint with a white background and black text, you throw a little bit more, inject creativity in there, you have more engagement in your audience. If you're doing presentations for, businesses, if you're doing different, proposals, things of that nature, giving a little life to it can be really helpful. I mean, like I said, I work in primarily the digital marketing, like e-commerce side of things. That's where I've been for a lot of my career. But I think about ads, social posts, emails, blogs, everything that comes out from a marketing standpoint. How can we just visually differentiate ourselves? Because that's always what we're trying to do from a brand perspective anyway. So utilizing tools like this, and then even inside your internal processes, right? Like I think about getting from Like if you wanted to get to a photo shoot, right? You're a brand. Think about that entire process of what it takes to get to a finished product. Maybe you have a soda and you want to get to, have a whole set of brand photography. I mean, you could essentially do it with AI, but also if you want to do it with a photographer, right? Got to hire a photographer, number one. Then when you get to the photographer piece of it, you got to direct a photo shoot. After that, or you got to hire models, you got to do all that kind of stuff. From that, then you got to get the revisions done. Then you got to get all the images polished. It takes a long time. But also, you don't know how to direct a photographer. So if you give them a set of images that you're like, I want to create it like this. This is how our brand looks. This is how we want everything to be positioned. That process is just going to be quicker. There's no thought process that is, you're essentially outsourcing decision making in a sense, right? So it can be a lot easier internally to get things done with tools like this. So long answer, but I mean, I can go down that rabbit hole for hours.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Me and you both. Yeah. Good thing we tell people, yeah, like, oh, Everyday AI is a 25-ish minute show. Cause yeah, otherwise me and Rory might actually talk for a couple hours, but enough of the chit chat, Rory. I need everyone to see the power. So especially when we talk about, ad creative, right? This first example that I'm going to show is amazing. So I'm going to have Rory, I'm going to have you again do our best to describe what we're seeing on screen here as I bring this up. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So before I hit play, because yes, we're going to talk about this, but there's this whole photo to video scene. Just quickly describe kind of this ad creative that we're going to be seeing here.
Yeah, so this is what we've been testing lately. Now, we've done a lot of ad creative with Midjourney and static, like meta ads, right? If you think about the meta ads game, what it is not necessarily as much of a quality game as it is a volume game, because you need to run a number of different ads to actually get data to then pick winners and then iterate off of them. So at the same time, obviously having good brand assets is going to be essential, but supplementing and getting more volume so that you have more ability to test so that you can make better decisions and then keep, progressing from there. That's what this is all about. So typically we've done a lot of this with static, and now we're just starting to test motion, because even subtle motion, even if it looks fake, it might stop your scroll. Again, we're talking about social media marketing here and, paid marketing. So this isn't like on a camp. This isn't going to be on Times Square, on a video board. This is going to be something that you're going to see in your feed on, in your stories on Instagram, things like that. So what we did here is we had static assets, and this is just a mock-up. So everybody knows this is just a total mock. We're testing different things here. Again, just to give a little subtle motion, because again, if that stops you in your tracks and you say, what is that? That's a win, right? Instead of people just scrolling right by it. So again, sometimes the variable that people are looking at is different. It's not necessarily what is this is a Super Bowl ad? Is this $1 million campaign? Or did this take me 5 minutes to get data? We're on the 5 minutes to get data side of it, right? So that's kind of how we look at this stuff.
So good. All right. So let's go ahead. So again, we have a mock-up campaign made from Midjourney images, and we'll talk about the process and the other tools, but let's just go ahead and play this and then we'll kind of talk through it. Little 7-second clip here.
Are you still running in circles trying to figure out how to actually grow your business with AI? Maybe your company has been tinkering with large language models for a year or more, but can't really get traction to find ROI on Gen AI. Hey, this is Jordan Wilson, host of this very podcast. Companies like Adobe, Microsoft, and NVIDIA have partnered with us because they trust our expertise in educating the masses around generative AI to get ahead. And some of the most innovative companies in the country hire us to help with their AI strategy and to train hundreds of their employees on how to use Gen AI. So whether you're looking for ChatGPT training for thousands or just need help building your front-end AI strategy, you can partner with us too, just like some of the biggest companies in the world do. Go to youreverydayai.com/partner to get in contact with our team, or you can just click on the partner section of our website. We'll help you stop running in those AI circles and help get your team ahead and build a straight path to ROI on Gen AI.
And yeah, so what we're seeing here too is just this, basically we're adding subtle motion to the images. We're not creating like full-on Michael Bay action scenes. It's just a little bit of motion, a little rotation, a little bit of zoom in, a little bit of, tilt in the camera, just to get you, again, from a visual perspective, to stop you in your tracks and say, wait, what? That's all we care about. So That's the idea.
And the quality here is insane. So for our podcast listeners, we have 3 different photos that were created in Midjourney, all that look part of this, kind of fictional Marc Jacobs campaign, but, similar style, similar lighting. It starts with a photo of a model, with a nice white blazer leaning in. So again, it looks like we have motion. It goes then to a high, like very high end looking purse. The details are exquisite. I mean, we have shadows, we have lighting, we have, rule of thirds going on. So it looks like, it's almost on a dolly, right? Like not dolly, like the image generator, but like a dolly that you would use in professional filming. And then the last shot that we have is a watch, right? And this watch, again, highly detailed. We're getting motion. I mean, when you look at this, it looks like it took maybe 10 to 15 humans, a couple of days, and probably a 6 or 7 figure budget easily to produce what in theory could be a little 7-second, clip here. So Rory, walk us through just real quick what this process looks like, because a lot of people, when they think Midjourney, when they think AI images, they don't ultimately think what we have here, which what you said is an example of a scroll stopping social media visual, right? This is a short video with movement. So quickly talk everyone through the process of how this even works to get from idea in Midjourney to something like this.
Totally. So, I mean, this wasn't a 7-figure budget. This was me in my sweatpants on my couch in 30 minutes doing this, right? So, this is, again, from the process standpoint, I was literally playing around with some level of photography, right? I wanted to have some sort of studio photography to see what we can do with it, how close we can get at the studio photography. And again, I'm thinking about like Marc Jacobs and their kind of bold look, direct flash photography, things like that. So from here, it was really just like, oh, I can get a good look. Can I animate it too? So basically in Midjourney, what I'm doing is I'm utilizing a very specific prompt set. And how I'm doing is I'm being very specific in terms of the look, the feel, kind of the tone, the colors, so that there's a cohesive look. And then I can just apply different subjects or objects to it. So instead of it being a woman in a white suit, it's a, handbag or it's a watch. So once I have those image sets down, then typically I would go to Runway. I mean, normally I just stop at static, right? I go build some templates. I'd create, the ad. But what we're doing now, again, like testing subtle motion, I would take these images from Midjourney into Runway, give it a little bit of motion to see what it looks like. Then I'm, utilizing different upscalers like Magnific for photos or Topaz Labs for video, and then building templates in Figma, putting it all together and watching it come to life. Now, again, this is not perfect. So anyone in here trying to nitpick, the one of the clock hands is a little bit not straight. Like, I get it, but this is a concept, right? This is what can be done. These tools are not fully developed yet, like Runway. Very good. Give it 5 more months. I mean, you're probably going to be indistinguishable. So, I mean, there's other video platforms too. So
people don't, like Rory, people literally, I don't think understand how powerful. Like, I remember telling people, a year and a half ago, like, hey, look at this, like AI image, look at this, look at that. And I'm telling people, like, more than a year ago, this is how we are going to be seeing ad campaigns in the future. 100% AI image, like 100% AI generated. Is that, like, just quickly, because I want to get into more examples, is that where we're headed? Like, are we going to get there? Is that the future of ad creative with things like you just showed here, using 3 or 4 AI tools in your sweatpants, and in the matter of hours getting this level of quality? Is that where we're headed?
I think so. I think you're starting to see it. I think you're probably going to, if I had one prediction, you'll probably see a Super Bowl commercial this year with some level of AI integration into it. Kanye West just released a trailer for his new video. I'm not technically a real Kanye West fan, but I saw it and I was like, that's Runway, 100%. I knew it right away. So people are starting to utilize it. And whether it looks totally polished like this or can be used in a more artistic way, you're going to see it because it's too cool not to, right? You know what I mean?
Gosh.
So.
Yeah. Exactly. And now I miss old Kanye. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Midjourney V6, and let's talk a little bit about what's new, because, Rory, one thing that you said when we were walking through that Marc Jacobs kind of mock ad, and again, if you're listening on the podcast, you got to go and watch this one so you can see the visuals. But, you talked about the power of prompting. You talked about the importance of having that specificity and that consistency in your prompting language from, shot to shot. So now we're on the screen here, talking about prompt coherence, because that's something that's really changed in new Midjourney V6. And there's kind of, the difference of a similar prompt with a woman kind of smoking a cigarette, in front of some plants with some great shadows and great smoke. But talk a little bit, about how some of these updates in Midjourney V6 specifically, handle our written words and our prompts a little bit better.
Yeah, so there was always a kind of a gripe with Midjourney about its coherence, like it wouldn't listen to everything in your prompt. So with Midjourney V6, the model became more literal, right? Mm-hmm. So literal meaning that like it's more like ChatGPT now. Like it'll only do what you tell it to do. It won't go and fill in as many blanks as it used to. So what I've done here is really tested the limits of the coherence, meaning like let's get super, super, super granular and almost write a prompt like a screenplay. Think about telling it a story. Right? Like with this prompt specifically, I went as deep as saying, again, who's the person, what they're doing, what direction they're facing, what color shirt they're wearing, what headband they're wearing, what color lipstick they have. You don't have to go this overboard, but if you want supreme control, especially if you're something, more branded or more feel like that, you can get it. So, I mean, even, if you look at this entire prompt, it's probably 60, 70 words, but we're breaking it out very specifically and telling it exactly what we want, like what the position is. Even, is the background blurred? What is happening with the smoke, the lights interacting with the smoke, right? If you say these things, it's going to happen. So really, it's just getting your vision nailed down. And that's where the art is in the prompt, is like saying, this is how I want it to look. How do I describe it? So copywriters too, probably going to have a really good opportunity to use these tools because you can describe things. That's really what it comes down to.
And talk a little bit real quick, because I think it's actually, even though we're talking semantics here of, prompt coherence, it's actually, I think, extremely important because, one of the biggest hurdles to clear or obstacles when it comes to integrating generative AI is the bad information out there, or is the people who are looking for shortcuts. And I think especially with earlier versions of Midjourney, people would try very long, detailed prompts like this, and the prompt handling wasn't that great, right? But now, like what Rory's talking about, I'm not going to read this whole prompt here because it would take a while, but I'm going to just spit out like a couple of the first sentences. So it says, satisfied Brazilian woman laying in bed with a cigarette, exhaling, subject position, facing right, photo type, medium shot, editorial, subject focus, sharp focus, mid-ground, wearing muted blue oversized t-shirt, headband, red lipstick, environment, cozy favela bedroom, houseplates, right? That's like a third of the prompt. But earlier versions of Midjourney, or even current versions of DALL-E, don't do very well with this very long, very detailed prompt handling. And people do test, right? And they say, oh, this version got, 70%. But what we see here on this screen, Rory, is you have all of those key terms, right, that you use. And it looks like you have about 20 or so kind of key terms here. And it hit Midjourney V6, hit each and every, right? There's a green check mark. It hits every single one, right?
Yep. And that's the thing, is like the new structure that I've been playing with is an old version 4 structure where it was really like you had to tell version 4 exactly what you wanted it to do. So, in version 5.2, you could just write like a few terms and it would kind of create the whole image for you, right? But you had less control over that. Midjourney took more liberty. Now I'm going back to the older structures where it's like, okay, who is the subject? What are they doing? What are they wearing? What position are they facing? You don't have to do all this. This is just if I want something very specific. Mm-hmm. What's going on in the background? Again, being very specific, like almost a screenplay, like a screenplay writer would set this up for a director. So that's kind of how I'm looking at prompting, and it's getting great results because, again, it just knows what to do. So even, just taking a lot of the, like, think about it in like ChatGPT prompting too. What we've done a lot of the times now is we're limiting those tokens, right? Like just limiting the tokens, getting rid of the fluff words, getting right to the meat, and it'll read that in a very specific way and then produce the way you want it to.
Oh gosh, I could just talk about this one for forever, but there's more things we have to get to here. So, especially when we talk about creativity, right?
Mm.
And add creative. This example is fantastic. For our podcast audience, this is a mock-up for Uber Eats, and it looks like we have 4 very distinct different campaigns for different types of food, and each one has about 4 or 5 different ads within this ad set. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Maybe Rory, if you could just walk us through, we'll zoom out first and then we'll zoom in, but walk us through the process and maybe how people can put something like this together in Midjourney and why they may want to.
Yeah, well, this is for, we've done this for a few brands, right? Like I can't name them specifically because again, there's seems to be a stigma around AI and people now wanting to know that, they're utilizing AI. So there's a mock-up and essentially of how we've been utilizing it, especially for ad creative, because ad creative, again, like I said, it comes down to a volume game and you need as much as possible. So with things like this, there's really an importance in being very meticulous, but also like really looking at this and saying, how can we get more localized in terms of our ad set? So maybe a larger company, you're running ads in multiple countries. Is sometimes if you're, you want to talk to an audience in South America or Asia and all of your models are American, right? Like that's it. Maybe it doesn't fit the same way as having someone that's hyper localized or even in the language too with ChatGPT. The difference between someone that talks, New York vernacular and Charleston vernacular, totally different. So if you can change that up and be a little bit more tone specific and localized, your ads are going to hit better. So again, things like this is where, we can be, again, like even with food, right? Like maybe a ham or a chicken sandwich doesn't hit the same way in South America as it does in the US. Maybe we're utilizing something different down there, empanadas, things like that, whatever it might be. I'm just throwing out examples off the top of my head. So getting more specific and having the ability to be versatile, but still staying on brand. That's where the stuff can be, very, very impactful.
Speaking about staying on brand, great comment here from who people say is the other Bash brother of Midjourney. So
there
shout out to Drew. Yeah, former guest. I think Josh from the comments here maybe called you guys that. So Drew is asking a very important question here. So talking about consistent styling, right? Because when we're seeing what we're seeing on the screen here, I know it's kind of like the same image, but that's important as well, and we're going to get to that. But maybe let's jump straight into this and maybe talk about consistent styling. So in this example, there's 6 different photos, and they kind of have this dark vibe, dark feel, on a beach, and someone surfing, kind of, it looks like in the Arctic, but this is a great example of having a consistent style or a consistent tone. So maybe if you could, Rory, walk us through kind of this photo set and get to Drew's point about like, how do you even get this consistent styling in Midjourney?
Oh, what's up, Drew? Yeah, man, this is good. And think about this for, again, even this process, this is something you can utilize storyboarding, within an agency, storyboarding campaigns. This doesn't have to be a finished product, but again, consistent styling, I think about it in terms of Midjourney prompting. You want to break an image down into visual building blocks. So you have a subject, you have an action, you have lighting, you have composition, you have color scheme, you have different elements, right? Like those are all little visual building blocks. Now, typically like the composition in the color scheme and, a number of different like details and modifiers, that's how you're going to want to stay consistent. So especially something like this, we're going with like a dark atmosphere. We want to have a specific color scheme. We want to have different elements of, I want to have black mountains and black sand. Like I'm putting all of that in the prompt. Now, again, when you want to consistently style it, sometimes all you have to do is then change the subject. So then it goes from, high angle shot of a beach to close up of a surfer with frost on his mustache. But then at the back end of the prompt, it's still, black sand, black ocean, dark atmosphere, high contrast, things like that, muted color tones. So when you're able to just find that prompt structure that works and those building blocks, then you can just iterate at will, because then the consistent theme is going to come through. And that's how you can really start to build these worlds or ideas around one, certain vision, if that makes sense.
And so a question here, which I think is maybe we should have addressed this one sooner, but it's probably something that so many people are thinking is the question here from Sajid asking, can we use Runway and Midjourney for commercial purposes? Because if you're watching on the live stream, like me, even though I see this AI image like generation stuff every day, I'm like, holy cow, this is crazy. But maybe if you're listening on the podcast and this is maybe new to you, it's something you're thinking like, oh yeah, can you be using these amazing tools for commercial purposes? I know it's kind of a gray area, Rory, but what's your what's your response to using this for commercial purposes?
I've done it. I mean, we utilize it, but we do it smart. We do it the way that you have to be cognizant of all the different pieces that are going around it. Would I use this for a Super Bowl ad? Probably not. Am I using this for a, giant billboard ad? Probably not. Am I using this on, meta ads and social media marketing right now? Definitely. Right. So things you got to be aware of. Number one is that we don't know what these tools were trained on. We don't know what DALL-E was trained on. We don't know what Midjourney was trained on. We don't know where that data came from. So utilizing a lot of the times reverse image search to check, to make sure that this is not, if I pulled up one of these images before I put it out commercially, that it doesn't come specifically or derivative from some other work, right? That's one thing. And also, just from an ethical standpoint, don't like to use artist names in my prompts ever. Like any sort of artist names, right? It's just, again, you don't need to do that. And it's, I think a lot of people do that in the style of commercially, right? Like do it for fun. I don't know if that's still crosses the ethical boundaries. I just don't do it. But if you want to go look up someone, like you've seen a lot of this stuff on Wes Anderson, like a style Wes Anderson, right? If you want to know how Wes Anderson composes his imagery, you can go look it up on ChatGPT. You can say what kind of compositions, color schemes, lighting, effects, and you can add that to your prompt. And then you can build out those visual building blocks, like I said, without having to go and be so, blatant about stealing kind of the style. Mm-hmm. Now, again, it opens up a really long conversation, but things like that, yes. And then also just being very cognizant of what copyrights are, what the copyright laws are within the country that you're in. Like US, everything that's produced fully by AI can't be copyrighted. So essentially it is your own personal stock photography that anyone else can use. Same thing, there's other countries now that are, utilizing different tactics. So I'm not versed in every single country. I just know that's what US says. So always something to be cognizant of is, yes, we are using this, but again, where did it come from? What was it trained on? How is it generating? So that you can be protected and be ethical in what you're doing.
Yeah. And I will say this without getting us too far, because I like, we need to see some more of these creatives, because it's doesn't make sense how good they are. However, like, you do always caution, like I always caution people, read terms of service, even personally. Midjourneys, they had a big update. I talked about it on the show about a month or so ago. Not a huge fan of Midjourney's new updated terms of service, but like Rory said, use this smart, use this responsibly, especially if you are using it for commercial campaigns. Use your best judgment. It's important also, if you are working with an end client, that you use transparency, right? Yes. Like that you disclose when and if and how you may be using AI imagery. So I had to get that out of the way. But speaking of commercial campaigns, this one is silky. So let's talk about this, Rory. Maybe just describe a little bit what we have going on here and kind of the process and how this can be ultimately be used for ad creative.
Yeah, so I came from the product licensing world. Essentially, what that is you're putting two disparate brands together and creating a new product line. So that's kind of how I thought about doing this. This is a mood board, right? But like, to me, producing this for a presentation to pitch this from, maybe I was representing Jeep and I wanted to pitch this to Patagonia, this would have been months to get this done or actually look this good. I did this with one prompt, right? So we're collaborating, taking the two brands, throwing them together. Now we have like a whole mood board essentially of a look and feel. This could also be for a campaign. This is just like think about these processes from, if you're working in the design field, it's just how do we get from point A to point B, and how do we make it smooth, and how do we tell the story? Because I think at the end of the day, if you can't tell the story, then what's the point? So that's kind of where the ideation came from this, and that's where a lot of the stuff I do comes from.
So good. So good. All right, let's look at one more, because I know, I was telling Rory before the show, we'll totally 30 minutes. We can't. My gosh, this stuff's too good. So this is a fun one, right? And obviously going back to our other points. So this is, Nike shoes and very, futuristic, bright neons, but talk a little bit about this one. And obviously this isn't one where you would, commercialize this, Rory, but talk about just some of the levels of creativity of how you got to this kind of Nike NASA collaboration mood board here. And also maybe some advice for others on what you learned, from even creating a mood board like this, and how they can use, some of your findings or learnings.
Yeah, man. So something like this was initially when version 6 came out. What I really want to do is just push it to the limit. Mood board, when you think about it, for an art generator is really hard because it's a million different elements. There's a lot of different textures, styles, colors, things going on. So basically that's always my like test is how far has the new version gotten. And this one, I specifically just love Nike branding. I mean, who doesn't? Maybe I'm in the minority there, but whatever. I always like to see like Nike and NASA because it's two disparate brands, right? Like space and Earth, right? It's two totally different pieces. How can we blend them together and make it cohesive? So here, you see a lot of different textures, a lot of different colors. You have the technical theme of NASA. You have the like street vibe, like the streetwear vibe of Nike kind of blending together in a very cool and unique way. So I like to test these different things to see how good Midjourney gets, basically each release. And this one was just really fun. I mean, like, I love using those two brands together. If you ever want to go try that, anyone, Nike and NASA, it comes out specifically great basically every single time. So that's kind of the thought process behind just having a little fun with the tools too,
So good. So good. All right, here, we're going to do this before we wrap because there's so many good questions. And that's what I love about the show is smart people can answer questions. Let's go rapid fire here, Rory. We'll see if we can get through a couple of them quickly. So Alar asking, so I'm focusing heavily on creating short ads for brands. What's your thought on this approach?
I think it's useful, right? Depending on what your source images are and how you're getting to that end result. I mean, tools like Runway can also utilize, existing product photography. It doesn't have to be just generated images. Like you can utilize your static images to animate them. So I think it's a great idea, especially if they're open to testing things like this, because why not? You're going to have a lot more video tools coming out other than Runway, over the next 6 months, Stable Diffusion video tool, things like that. It's going to get way more easy to do this stuff.
Huge. And yeah, we talked about that earlier, just the process of, yes, Midjourney images are great, but then being able to bring them into another program like Runway and add, visuals or add movement. That's where it becomes super powerful. All right, next, rapid fire. Here we go. Richard asking, don't AI tools, text and pixel just lead to everything becoming just a bit generic?
I think that depends on who's prompting it. I don't know if I've seen another Nike image that looks like that. I mean, you can go try to find it and search on Midjourney, but I'm not saying I'm the best or anything. It's just my vision's different, right? Like I think that's what it comes down to. So, if you can get different with your vision, if you just say the same thing every time, like girl on a beach, like you're going to get things that look generic. If you're going to say girl on a beach, with the sun half setting, reflecting purple light against the water, blah, 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 like it's going to look totally different than just girl on a beach. So I think it all comes down to what the vision is and executing on it.
Perfect answer. All right. Anthony asking, I wonder what the reception everyone is getting from clients to start integrating this into the projects. What's it been like for you so far?
I think it's been great because I'm using it as a supplement, not the entirety, right? So like, again, it's a supplement. I like to think everyone, it's not just like, let's scrap our agencies, let's scrap our photographers, let's scrap everything. It's a supplement. We can test it. I think every good business is testing and tracking their metrics. So again, things like this, can we inject this a little bit? And also what we've seen with some of it is it's adjusted course on some brand, positioning, right? Like we've tested some more AI looking stuff with a little bit more focus on specific areas. And then like it starts to shift the perception because that stuff hits on social. It's like, okay, let's maybe make our ads look like that. So organic to paid. So it's interesting how it's developing. But I mean, again, like it's always client by client basis. Everyone thinks about it differently.
Cool. Tara asking, how would you compare this to Adobe's AI tools, their Firefly?
I like Adobe. I use Photoshop generative fill for a lot of different things, depending on what, sometimes I pair the two together. I think there's a really good thing for anyone that's in design or needs vector images now on Adobe Illustrator. I don't know if many people talk about it that much, but there's a text to vector option. So this is just something I want to drop here because it's super helpful if you're looking for icons or little typography, things like that, like text to icon or text to, sorry, I just totally lost my train of thought there. Text to vector is like massive because that used to be a pain in the butt on AI was creating or on Adobe Illustrator, creating vectors. So think about that one too. Really helpful.
So good. All right, here we got 2 or 3 more. So Alar saying, you mentioned that you don't use artist names. What about brand names like you did with the Nike shoes?
Yeah, I'm not putting that out for commercial use, right? Like that's just basically showing some examples of what can be done. Now, maybe that's wrong. I typically tend to utilize that for own personal use. So I'm not going to go and put that out into commercially. So again, maybe I need to think about that one a little bit more, but consistently, I've just been doing that for fun to test the tools and to see kind of what can be produced from it.
Yeah, and obviously you're not alone in that one. All right, Mauricio asking, if you were to offer creative ads with AI, how does that pricing differ to a real marketing agency? Great question.
Again, I think it comes down to how much you want and how much needs to be, what the output is. Because if the output is the same, like, if we're creating the same amount of ad sets with humans and with AI, like I don't see the difference there from a pricing standpoint, especially if the performance is going to be able to be judged a lot quicker and you're going to get more data and access, to optimizing those ads. So I think I think a lot of people think that AI is going to drive the price down. Personally, I don't think so, because it's going to help performance if we have more data and are able to optimize quicker. So the value of that is just as important as the creative itself, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, again, it's going to take a little bit of positioning if you're experienced with the tools and experienced with the outputs to be able to position that to potential clients. But at the same time, if you're producing results at a much quicker rate and a much higher clip, again, your value is still that, not just the creative.
All right. And then our last and our rapid fire questions from Alar again. What's your thoughts on post-production, like adding some unique elements then when, at that point, it's not fully made by AI? Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
100%. 100%. Like, I do a lot of this stuff in Figma. You saw the Marc Jacobs ads, they do the Uber Eats ads in Figma. I create templates in there, drop the images in, even the After Effects in terms of like building different pieces into the ad sets. Like if you're a graphic designer, right? Like you don't need to use a full image. Like I need to have all this text in there. Can Midjourney generate all of it? No, just generate the image and then add the text yourself. So, it's just a piece in the mix. Like I said, don't think of it as everything is a finished product. It's just a piece. You're a chef in the kitchen putting all the ingredients together. And this ingredient can be done a lot quicker than slow roasting, a pot roast for 5 hours. This is like the Instapot version where you do it or the air fryer version where you do it in like 30 minutes, right? So like that's kind of how I look at it.
So good. All right, we made it through rapid fire. I'm taking up so much of your time, but I have to ask you, Rory, as we wrap everything up here, right? Because the premise of this is Midjourney, kind of the combination, right? So if I were to summarize everything, I think that the AI image in the AI creative space has changed so much in the past 6 months with the giant leap in quality and control going to Midjourney V6. And I think that Midjourney right now is so far ahead of all the other AI image generators. And then combining that with the new controls and capabilities. We didn't even get into, multi-brush and runway. We'll have to do that on another show. But you combine these huge improvements in quality and control of Midjourney V6 with being able to get consistent images and then being able to create movement with these AI images by using an AI video tool like Runway. In my opinion, this changes the way that ad creative is done. So, yeah. Rory, with all this in mind, maybe what's your either piece of advice or your biggest takeaway for people when it comes to AI's influence on ad creative in our society in 2024? What's that takeaway?
I think the biggest piece of advice I can give is learn the tools now while they're developing. Because I think about this quick analogy. If you gave, your grandparents an iPhone right now and said, learn it, and they've never been experienced to it, they'd look like hieroglyphics to them, right? But we've been with every iteration of the iPhone, so we can just pick it up and know how it works. That's how I think about using the tools and learning the tools, because they're only going to develop, and the more expansive they get, the harder it is going to be to just pick it up and use it, right? So that to me, and I think about looking at the future of marketing, right? Like, is everything that we're doing right now from a creative standpoint the end all be all? Like, is it always going to be email? Is it always going to be websites? Like I think about the Vision Pro coming out for Apple. That's going to create immersive environments, right? Like you're going to be able to have an immersive environment for your brand marketing perspective, right? What does that look like? Are you going to be able to do that with conventional tools quickly enough to get to market to compete? Like this is why I don't sleep at night. This is why I don't sleep, because I'm just like, I see Vision Pro and I'm like, what? Like, what does that do to everything? So, without me going on another diatribe for 40 minutes here, I'll kind of cut it at that.
Oh man. Well, hey, if you do want to hear like 40 minutes more worth of content, that's what our newsletter is. So Rory, thank you so much for joining the Everyday AI show and walking us through what's new in Midjourney and how we can use that with our ad creative in AI. We so much appreciate your time and your insights.
Yeah, man, it's great being back. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, always. And hey, there's so much that Rory just showed us. This is literally, we just got a University 101, 201, 301 course on AI art. But if you missed it, yeah, there's a lot going on, visuals, prompts. We're going to be sharing it all. Don't worry. You know, Rory has just a wealth of information. We're going to be sharing more about his company, some of the, courses and guides that he has. Make sure to check it out in the newsletter. It's all going to be there. Go to youreverydayai.com, sign up for that free daily newsletter to check that out. Also, make sure to join us tomorrow as we talk about maximizing the effectiveness of AI in healthcare with the president of the American Medical Association. All right, we'll see you back tomorrow and every day for more Everyday AI. Thanks, y'all.
And that's a wrap for today's edition of Everyday AI. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps keep us going. For a little more AI magic, visit youreverydayai.com and sign up to our daily newsletter so you don't get left behind. Go break some barriers, and we'll see you next time.